Shooting with an Elcan Specter 124, I noticed my bullets hit way off target, so I had a closer look at why. I couldn't believe how I was shooting, and I usually hit the targets I'm aiming for. I found that the construction with an exposed adjustment mechanism and the switch lever for changing from 1 to 4 times magnification was the main reason for my problems. I found very big problems with this. Most other combat optics like the Aimpoint red dot sight or the magnified rifle scopes like the most widely used Trijicon, ACOG, or other well-known brands like Hensel or Leopold Hammer all have internal adjustment mechanisms. This gives a rock-solid housing that doesn't move, and all fine mechanics is placed inside the scope's body, well protected from the environment. There have been soldiers and competitive shooters talking about zero shift or point of impact shift between 1 to 4 in the Elcans. With the exposed mechanism, there can be all kinds of issues in a combat situation. The gear is put to serious test and just need to be totally reliable. A soldier's life depends on it. I'm not doing this video to talk down on a specific brand or optic because I'm a particular fan of another, but I just want to do what it's made for, to increase precision. This I'm doing because it is a serious safety issue that could cause fatal mistakes. This is how I see it. If you are a soldier having to open fire at a hostile target in a town and you hit several yards to the right, who stands there? You wouldn't have control over your weapon or wouldn't know which bystander you hit until it is too late. Or if a policeman or soldier aims at the legs to avoid a kill shot and the bullet hits the torso or head. Or you enter a building and someone shoots at you and your bullet hits 20 inches to the right. Then what happens? If such things happen because of the equipment malfunction due to poor design, then the equipment is not safe, at least not in my book. Here you can see the hinge in the front of the Elcan that allows it to tilt when adjusting elevation. On the side of the front hinge you have the windage screws for left or right adjustment. In the back you see the wheel or knob where you adjust elevation for up and down. There are the same on all Elcans with this kind of external adjustment mechanism, and I've seen some other optics out there that has similar constructions. I wouldn't trust any of them after my experiences and following tests. And on the Specter DR model that I used, there is a lever or handle that you use to switch from 1 to 4 magnification. All over you see slots and cavities and moving parts that can be jammed and end up out of place by all kinds of things in the field: twigs, leaves, sand, dust, stone, grass, mud, snow, ice, you name it. For my tests I first tried on the shooting range, but because of the extreme movements and issues I found, I moved in and filmed at only 10 yards. The target had to be marked up to 10 inches below the zero, and I ran out of board on the left. I could only hit 20 inches. For my European friends, I marked this in centimeters, but you'll have to do the math from yards yourself. Just to be clear before we look at the results, when the reticle moves out of the left and you aim with it, your bullets will hit the seen distance to the right of the target. When the reticle moves down and you aim with it, you will hit the same distance high in the target. Another thing to point out is that the eye is much more flexible than the camera, so when you see distortion through the scope, that would hint that something is wrong. You will not see any of that when you shoot with it. Everything looks perfect. On this H&K, the front sight hints that something is wrong, but I can assure you, you won't see that when you shoot with it. You will just miss the target. According to my calculations, and I think they are correct even if I'm a much better shooter than I am with math, the measurements you see here, you should multiply by 10 to get that is 100 yards. So for example, a 10 MOA change, which is 10-inch point of impact change at 100 yards, is something you can barely see as movement in these target at 10 yards. To me, a 10 MOA change would be far more than I could live with on my AR. It wouldn't be acceptable even in a machine gun. You can calibrate what that would be at 1,000 yards. One MOA shift after I have bumped into something with my scope or gun would be fine. Here you see the movement sideways. This is movement when the magnification switch lever is in its correct position. It's the play in the position. So imagine if you got a clog of dirt or snow or twig was jammed under the scope. You wouldn't see it through the scope. The lever has to cutout slot that it springs into both 4x and 1x positions, but there is plenty of play in the 1x slot. You can see how the lever is worked. From the front you can see the moving optical construction inside the scope. Moving the lever in the slot, the play gives this movement, pointing your aim way off target. The first 50 plus inches are with the touch of your finger, no force at all. But if you push a little harder, you can almost double it. So now why try what happens with elevation? From what I've seen, you will find the same movement also in the fixed magnification Elcan scopes. And I believe similar designs have the same problems, like the English SA80, and I've seen aim point red dots with external adjustments. Not the Comp 4M that the Army has, but a couple of bigger ones. Pushing with the thumb up on the eyepiece, you lift the whole scope. There is a spring that pulls the scope back down towards the mount. With a soft push you get over 5 inches. With a little force you get 10 inches, and not only vertical movement. There seems to also be a play in the hinge that gives a few inches sideways at the same time. Here I'm showing simple tests of what could be expected by a twig or something else getting stuck and affecting the switch lever. I place it there and I pull it away. It can also be something getting stuck under the scope where the lever turns and shaft to the movement internal construction. I wonder how long that seal around the shaft will last with keeping it waterproof. And will there be wear and tear on the mechanical spring back and forth over time? Here I'm doing a similar test with elevation. So in a relatively clean environment like the shooting range, you wouldn't have a problem with this. But as all know, it is not always like that. If anything gets jammed between the mount and body of the rifle scope, or in the slot above the adjustment wheel, you will be off zero. Making your way through the dense forest and undergrowth or through a jungle, it's almost sure you'll get something jammed there. And I'm sure wet snow and ice is not a very good combination for this rifle scope. If you don't believe me or think I've done any tricks with this presentation, I can just say I hope you try it yourself, and that you will do it before you go on a mission. I leave you with these scenes and pictures again. Would you trust your life to this construction in a combat situation? After what I've experienced myself and now tested, I just can't understand that these scopes are being more and more common in the military forces. Are the products not tested before they are bought and sent into the front lines? Isn't holding zero in all conditions in the combat situation something that is specified and required when they win contracts? It can't be.